There are people who at first glance seem completely harmless. People who present themselves with a friendly, affectionate, and even charming attitude. Initially, they show empathy, take an interest in your stories, and seem like the kind of company anyone would want to have around. However, as time passes and you spend more time with them, a subtle transformation begins to unfold. Often so subtle it's almost imperceptible, the friendly facade starts to fade, and a heavier, more disconcerting energy begins to emerge. It's as if the true essence of that person finally surfaces, and before you realize it, you're already trapped in an emotional web where they start manipulating you, draining your vital energy, interfering with your emotional balance, and worst of all, making you doubt your own perception. In extreme cases, if you're not alert and prepared, you can end up mired in confusion and suffering, requiring strength, clarity, and deep awareness to escape. Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist, deeply studied this type of phenomenon and called it contact with the shadow, the dark part of human nature that tries to manifest itself even when disguised as kindness. The signs are always there, small, silent, but incredibly powerful. They appear in various forms: subtle sensations, unexplained discomfort, shifts in your energy field. It's crucial to pay attention to them because they are the first warnings your unconscious gives you. More important than merely recognizing them is learning to protect yourself before it's too late. Staying until the end of this video might be one of the wisest decisions you make, because learning to safeguard your inner peace is one of the most effective ways to preserve your mental health when dealing with toxic presences like these. Energy, unlike words, doesn't lie. When someone gives you a strange or unsettling feeling, even if you're smiling or speaking politely, trust that perception. By the way, tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced something like this? Just comment yes. If you've ever felt that strange energy from someone, it's likely already happened to you. You meet someone for the first time, and although everything seems normal, something inside you feels tense, a knot in your stomach, a tingling in your chest. That person did nothing wrong, said nothing offensive, acted in no suspicious way, yet there was something in their eyes, perhaps in their tone of voice, or even in how they occupied space, that caused an inexplicable discomfort. This is where many people make a mistake. They choose to ignore those initial feelings because the rational mind starts offering justifications. I shouldn't judge without knowing. Maybe I'm being unfair. I'm probably overreacting. We think that after all, there's nothing concrete, no proof that this person poses any threat, but the unconscious has already noticed. Jung often spoke of how our unconscious perceives information long before our rational mind can interpret it. He called it the collective unconscious, a vast system of inherited knowledge, transmitted through generations, that allows us to sense danger before we can logically explain it. In other words, your intuition isn't magic or paranoia. It's an alert signal from a deeper part of your psyche. I once found myself in a conversation that, on the surface, seemed normal, but beneath the words, there was a hidden agenda, a monologue disguised as interest, where the goal was to unload thoughts and emotions, expecting me to simply absorb it all. What seemed like a normal conversation was actually a constant demand for validation, attention, and emotional energy. And the most concerning part was that the emotional burden they carried was silently transferred to me, as if I were responsible for sustaining it. Through this process of observation and quiet exhaustion, I began to understand one of the most dangerous dynamics that can occur between two people, the kind that operates in silence, without aggression, without visible harm, but slowly drains you one interaction at a time. Some people don't hurt you with harsh words or obvious actions. They erode you bit by bit. They steal your spark, your motivation, your clarity, until you feel like someone who no longer possesses their own light. Jung offered a powerful insight into this behavior. According to him, people who don't acknowledge and integrate their own shadow, the repressed, unaccepted, and unresolved parts of their psyche, end up projecting that content onto others. This means the anxiety, emotional void, and internal chaos they carry begin to transfer onto you. Without realizing it, you start feeling like you're bearing a burden that isn't yours. There are specific signs that can help you identify when someone is draining your vital energy. The first is the constant centralization of conversations. Whenever you talk to this person, the topic always revolves around their problems. No matter how the conversation starts. It always ends with complaints, frustrations, or personal conflicts. And what's even more telling is that they don't seek solutions. They just want to unload and transfer that emotional weight onto you. The second important sign is how they react when you try to set boundaries. If you say you need some time for yourself or that you're unavailable, guilt suddenly arises. They make you feel selfish, as if you're abandoning someone who needs you. It's subtle but effective. Emotional manipulation because it plays on your sense of responsibility and empathy. You start feeling guilty for taking care of yourself. The third sign is perhaps the most revealing. The relief you feel when you distance yourself. When someone is truly important to your life and their presence is healthy, their absence creates longing. But when someone is toxic, distance brings relief. If after stepping away from someone, you notice your body feels lighter, your mind clearer, and your energy returning, it's a powerful sign that this person was draining you. This process, in most cases, doesn't stem from conscious malice. Many people who drain others have no idea they're doing it. What happens is they've never learned to confront their own void, never dealt with their own shadows, and not knowing how to access an inner source of light, they seek that light in others, absorbing it, feeding on your emotional vitality because they don't know how to generate their own. But it's crucial to understand one thing. You're not responsible for healing anyone. It's not your mission to save people from the pain they refuse to face. If someone is draining your energy, even if they're close to you, you have every right to protect your emotional health and walk away. Failing to do so can lead you to a state of chronic exhaustion, where you lose touch with your boundaries, your needs, and even your sense of self. And that's just the gateway to an even more dangerous pattern. There's a deeper, more destructive layer in these relationships, when the person not only drains your energy, but starts making you doubt your own perception. This is what we call silent manipulation, a form of control that isn't shown through direct aggression but through small actions and words that slowly erode your inner confidence. This type of manipulation is dangerous because it doesn't look like an attack. On the contrary, it appears as concern, kindness, or love. It hides in the details, a calm tone of voice, seemingly innocent words, subtle gestures, phrases like, "You're overreacting as usual," "That never happened," "You're imagining things," or "You misunderstood me." Little by little, you begin to doubt your memory, your emotions, your own perspective. This pattern has a name in psychology: gaslighting. It's a strategy that emotionally destabilizes another person, making them question their reality. Jung used to say that everything we deny in ourselves, we project onto others. And that's exactly what these people do. They can't face their own flaws, so they manipulate someone else's reality to maintain control. One of the gravest consequences of gaslighting is that over time, the victim loses connection with their truth. You start believing you're always wrong, that your way of seeing things is mistaken, that you need someone else's approval before trusting your own feelings or decisions. This creates emotional dependency. The more you need external validation, the easier it becomes for someone to control you. There are clear signs that someone is manipulating your perception. One is the constant shifting of narratives. What they said yesterday, they deny today. What happened last week is now dismissed as your imagination. And when you try to point out these contradictions, they twist the situation and accuse you of being confused, forgetful, or misinterpreting things. Another sign is how your emotions are constantly invalidated. When you express how you feel, you're immediately labeled as dramatic, sensitive, or unstable. You become the problem in their version of the story. Another sign is isolation. Gradually, these people begin to distance you from others, saying no one else understands you like they do, that they're the only ones who truly grasp the situation. And so you disconnect from support systems, becoming increasingly dependent on their distorted version of reality. Finally, a devastating sign. After talking to this person, you feel more confused than before. Instead of clarity, you're left with doubt, wondering whether what you experienced was real or imagined. You start questioning if you're going crazy or if you're truly the one who's always wrong. Someone close, someone emotionally available and empathetic, might be labeled as selfish simply for setting healthy boundaries. They might be called cold or insensitive when it's actually the other person who couldn't handle their emotions. You might find yourself accepting blame for things that weren't your responsibility, just because someone refuses to take accountability for their own actions. When someone avoids confronting their internal flaws, they need an external container, and that container often ends up being you. Let me share an experience that deeply impacted me. I met someone who always seemed to be in conflict with the world. There was always a new complaint, a new betrayal, a new enemy. According to them, people were selfish, fake, manipulative. But over time, I noticed something curious. They behaved exactly like the people they constantly criticized. They belittled those who disagreed with them, demanded loyalty but never offered it, expected support but never reciprocated. The strangest part was that eventually they started trying to convince me I was just like them. They'd say I didn't care enough, that I was cold, that I was becoming one of those horrible people they despised. For a while, this manipulation began to affect me. I found myself questioning, am I really selfish? Am I turning into a worse person? But then I realized what was happening. They didn't want to face their own shadow, so they needed to deposit it somewhere. And that place was me. When I finally refused to carry guilt that wasn't mine, they distanced themselves. It wasn't long before they found someone else to project onto. There are practical ways to identify when someone is projecting their shadow onto you. A clear indicator is noticing how you feel after being near that person. If you leave the interaction feeling confused, emotionally heavy, or burdened with discomfort that wasn't there before, ask yourself, does this belong to me, or am I carrying something that isn't mine? People who constantly project never take responsibility. They always play the victim in every story. They point fingers outward, never inward, and make you feel responsible for everything that goes wrong. The best way to protect yourself is to develop the skill of discerning what belongs to you and what doesn't. When someone accuses you, pause and reflect honestly. Is there any truth here? If so, acknowledge it and grow. If not, don't accept the weight. Set firm boundaries. If you notice someone is constantly trying to make you carry the burden of their unresolved problems, walk away. It's not your job to be a mirror for the pain someone else refuses to face. There's something even deeper. Some people don't just project their problems onto you. They can't stand to see you shine. That's right. There are individuals who stay close, who seem to enjoy your presence, who share affection and camaraderie, but deep down, they feel discomfort at your growth. They won't say it aloud, they won't attack you directly, but whenever you succeed, whenever you grow, evolve, or improve, their energy shifts. At first, it's hard to notice. Everything seems normal, but then you realize celebrations fade, compliments become rare. When you share your achievements, their responses are flat, unenthusiastic. Sometimes they try to downplay what you've done, saying it's no big deal or that many people have done it. If you pay attention, you'll notice these reactions aren't isolated. They're a pattern. Carl Jung once said that envy is nothing more than the shadow of a person who hasn't integrated it. When someone hasn't worked through their feelings of frustration, inadequacy, or comparison, they can't bear to see in others what they couldn't achieve themselves. The most dangerous part of this is that these people aren't distant or obvious enemies. They're close friends, family, people around you smiling, saying kind words, but inside, they're unsettled by your success. I experienced this firsthand with someone very close to me, a friend who for a long time showed support and camaraderie. But as I began to gain traction, growing personally and professionally, their attitude started to change. Whenever I shared a new achievement, their responses came with, doubts. When I talked about a new project, they'd say things like, "Are you sure that's going to work?" Or, "I think you're moving too fast," or, "I'm not sure that market is for you." At first, I thought they were just being realistic, but over time, I noticed a pattern. It wasn't concern, it was discomfort disguised as advice. The most curious part was that they had no problem celebrating others' achievements. They'd applaud colleagues, congratulate acquaintances, but when it was my turn, their enthusiasm vanished. That's when I realized they couldn't stand my light. And this happens more often than we realize. Envy doesn't always show up as open hostility. Often, it comes disguised as friendship, affection, closeness. That's what makes it so dangerous. Because you trust, and when you trust, you open up. So how can you tell when someone is silently resentful of your growth? The answer lies in the small reactions. When you share a triumph, and instead of a genuine smile, you get a blank stare or a discouraging comment. When instead of support, they start listing problems, pointing out flaws, or sowing doubts in your mind. When compliments are replaced by advice that holds you back instead of propelling you forward. And perhaps the most revealing sign, when those people, seeing your continuous progress, begin to distance themselves as if your light were too much for them to bear. This isn't a coincidence. The problem isn't that you're changing too much or becoming someone impossible to follow. What's really happening is that the light you emit, the natural brilliance you gain through growth and authenticity, begins to deeply disturb the shadows residing in certain people around you. And this is inevitable. Jung once said that when someone refuses to acknowledge the darker parts of themselves, their fears, frustrations, and failures, they begin to project those aspects onto others. That's exactly what happens when someone is silently envious of you. There was always something intense, emotional, captivating about them. At first, I was enchanted. I felt drawn in, as if part of a fascinating narrative. But as time passed, the story became repetitive. There was always a new conflict, someone betraying them, someone attacking them, another imminent crisis. Their life was never stable, never at peace. The scariest part was slowly realizing I was becoming part of that instability. What once felt like vibrant energy revealed itself as pure exhaustion. What seemed like a deep connection turned out to be an emotionally draining game. What appeared to be authenticity became a cycle of manipulation fueled by endless drama, until I finally realized this person didn't want to escape chaos. They were so identified with confusion, with lack of control, that their entire identity was built on it. Chaos was their emotional habitat, and by keeping me connected to it, they were dragging me into the same destructive pattern. The biggest sign that someone carries this type of destructive energy is simple but profound. Chaos follows them wherever they go. There's a big difference between someone going through a tough phase, something we all experience, and someone whose life is a continuous sequence of instability. When you realize this person never has peace in any area of their life, there's always arguments, disappointments, scandals, or breakdowns around them. That's a major warning sign. Look at this person's past. Observe the patterns. If every friendship ends in betrayal, every relationship in drama, every opportunity in disaster, if their stories are always turbulent with everyone who's crossed their path, don't believe it'll be different with you. You're not the exception. No one is. Jung used to say, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate. That's why these patterns repeat, because the person doesn't want to or can't see what they need to change within. And until that happens, they'll keep replaying the same script, destroying everything and everyone who comes close. The best way to protect yourself from someone like this is clear and direct. Don't try to save them. Don't fall into the illusion that things will be different with you. Don't believe your love, patience, or presence will be enough to change the nature of someone who's chosen to live in chaos. The only thing that truly works is distance. Guard your peace. Build an environment of emotional stability around yourself. And above all, don't let anyone destroy it. Because if someone brings disorder to every area of their life, it's only a matter of time before that same disorder starts flooding yours too. It's important to understand that not everyone who crosses your path in life arrives with clear intentions or obvious behaviors. Some people never show direct aggression or visible offense. On the contrary, many arrive smiling, seeming open, even concerned. However, even unintentionally or unknowingly, they can have a profound impact on you, and not always a positive one. Some will slowly absorb your vital energy like emotional sponges, and you won't notice it immediately. You'll simply start feeling tired, drained, less motivated to follow your own path. Others act in more subtle, strategic ways, manipulating with sweetness, carefully chosen words, gestures that seem harmless, until one day you realize you're doubting yourself. You can no longer trust your feelings, your decisions, your own perception. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a slow deconstruction, starting with small suggestions, small corrections, slight distortions of reality. Your intuition is telling you, because those messages often arrive before your mind can logically explain them. If you commit to identifying these signals, if you start taking seriously how certain people make you feel, you'll be able to protect yourself. Before it's too late, you'll set boundaries. Before losing your clarity, you'll preserve your energy. Before it's drained, and most importantly, you'll avoid being dragged into emotional suffering that was never yours to begin with. Protecting your inner peace isn't selfishness. Saying no, walking away, choosing who stays in your life. This isn't coldness. It's emotional intelligence. It's self-respect. Trusting your intuition isn't being dramatic. It's survival instinct. You have the right, and more than that, the responsibility, to protect what keeps you strong, centered, and whole. Because if you don't take care of your peace, sooner or later, it'll slip through your fingers. Now tell me, are you ready to protect your peace? To shield yourself from energies that drain you and dim your light? If you've made it this far, comment, "I will protect my precious peace." I want to know you were here with me until the end, reflecting on all this with an open mind and a caring heart. If this message resonated with you, if it added value, hit the like button right now. It's just one click, it's free, and it helps this content reach more people who need to hear it. And if you want to keep walking this journey of self-discovery, understanding the human mind, energetic relationships, and everything surrounding Carl Jung's fascinating universe, subscribe to the channel now and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss the next videos, all crafted with high-quality content to strengthen your awareness and emotional intelligence.